All right, good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to be here. It's my first MISP workshop, and I've been working with the core team on a few ideas, and I'd like to share with you those ideas. So it's not from me to you. I also want to hear your feedback, so I'm going to have a few questions for you so we can just chat about it. I'm going to talk about sightings, so about me. So I'm Sebastien Tricaud. I've been developing a lot of different tools. I work for a company called Devo. We do data engineering, data management. I'm also the lead developer of a tool called FOP. I'm giving a workshop for Hacklu in 2 days, and I also work on various other open source projects. So I've been doing this presentation listening to Professor Longhair. If you haven't heard of him, he's just amazing. So what is citing? I'm sure everybody has seen this in the UI. So it's basically when you have an event and you want to know that you've seen this event. So you can click here on the thumb up, say, yep, I've seen this. It looks good. Or, no, looks bad, false positive. And you can configure a bunch of stuff. So first of all, how many of you are using sightings? All right, that's not a lot. It's less than a third. Actually, it's maybe a fourth or a fifth of the audience. So it's good to know. Among those that are using sightings, are using the sighting time graph feature, which is just to see how many things on time are useful. All right, everybody works for a circle. Interesting. And if I am much faster of dealing with sighting, if I remove the graph feature, because it can have an impact, do you think it's okay, or would you disagree with this? And then we can debate, and I'm happy to debate about this. Who think it's okay? All right, thank you. Okay, you want to get the latest, but you don't necessarily need to know in the last, because I have to store everything, like, and I would be much faster if I just store the first and the latest. You want to know the first, of course, that makes sense. But I was wondering if you want something in between, like how many I had last week. Mm-hmm. Okay, no, that's good to know. Like, all right, that's something to consider, and maybe we can have the option and see how many are using, and you are aware more than everybody here on the details of the use cases. So I'm really interested to hear that. And last question: who needs ACL on top of signing? It's a serious question. Like, are you okay to share to another organization that you have seen this host or this IP address? Like, who is against or who is for? Raise your hand if you're against. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, that's good to know. That's exactly what I want to hear. I want to get an idea of where I need to start in order to just keep this project moving faster and have some arguments. Now I can tell the guys, hey, you see in the audience only 1/4 is using sightings. So no, thank you. All right, let's keep moving. So we're going to look from a MySQL point of view, the storage of sightings. So basically this is there is a sightings table here. And in that case, I'm looking at all the event ID 2607 and all the sightings for that event ID. So you have different sightings here, and you have the organization, you have everything. So one line is one sighting. So that's how the graph is being made, is just by looking at the single event and the event ID and just the graph over time. So if we get our attribute stored in sighting, we just get, all right, so select from that attribute what the ID is the one that you saw before in the sighting table. That's one event. And if we store one attribute twice, it's going to make 2 lines. And if we store 3 attributes, it's going to be stored 3 times. So then that's how the graph can be made. Just simple. I just wanted everybody to be on the same page here. So this is the SQL storage of sighting. So there's a bunch of things here: the ID, the attribute ID, event ID, organization ID, the date of the sighting, the UUID, the source, and the type. The type is something that's very specific to how MISP sees the sighting. And what I did is I wrote a daemon. I'm like, okay, I haven't written a database in my life. I missed something. So how about I write a database? And if I have to, I want to learn a language. And which language? Rust. All right, let's do it in Rust. So basically, this is the Rust structure of the citing, and I try to be as minimalistic as I could be, where I only store the value, which is a string, the first time we've seen it, the last time we've seen it, the source that we can define, and the source timestamp. Come back and say, all right, for now I don't know what type of citing this is, but now I know that, oh, it's from a honeypot, and I learned that a few days later, so maybe it's interesting to know the source at some point, and I want to know when I learned about the source, because it may not be in the beginning. And of course, how many times I've seen this. So the philosophy behind citing DB is just sightings. It's just sightings from MISP. It's no more nor less than that. I just want to do sightings. I don't want to do a generic database. I don't want to do anything that's like overcomplicated. I just want to do sightings from MISP. I was very inspired from Zookeeper. Zookeeper is a way to, it's in the Hadoop ecosystem, and some people say it's an algorithm for a synchronization to know where you go to your database and when. But the way I see Zookeeper is also as a key store, where you can store configurations and you can say, all right, the key is a path, and then you just work with the path, which I found very, very convenient. And also I wanted to make HTTP harder to configure than HTTPS, which means by default, I give a certificate that everybody has access to the private key. It's just self-signed. But I'm like, okay, you can change that and you can use this one. It's actually no worse than having a clear text being sent over the wire. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's just harder to configure HTTP for that purpose. So I'll give you an example of the namespacing in CitingDB. So the namespacing is just, as you can see here, the path where you have, in that case, the UUID and the variable host. So that's your key. So the key can be defined in the way you want. In that case, I say, all right, I want to get the UID of the organization and the name of the variable. Or I can do, all right, I want to get all the hosts, and I'm just doing all hosts, and this way I can store also all the hosts regardless of the UID of the organization. Or I can do all and also add the type here, because as you remember, in the MISP SQL database, there was the type. So we could agree on a structure. But at least this is not the database job to do that. It's just above. And we just store all those indicators into this key. So the thing is, there's a lack of space for the namespace, which is on purpose. We could refine this in MISP if we want to, but at least from the database point of view, I just want the database to be very, very dumb and just store what it's been told to store. So as for the value, there is a REST API that allows you to read and write on CitingDB. So the value is sent in base64 URL and no padding. And we can offer many more ways in the future, but for now, that's what works in the database. And we provide a tool called base64 that's just going to encode this way. So then you can just give into the URL this. For example, I want to store MISP as the value. And this is actually going to translate into this base64 URL no padding. So let's do a demo. So here I'm starting the daemon. So there is just a simple configuration file. Let me show you that first. So you just tell listen port. So I took 9999 because the MISP modules were in 6666. So, I didn't have any idea. So in that case, I don't daemonize. And I just have a DBDir, which is where I'm storing the data on disk if I want to store things on disk at the log level, and SSL configured by default with those weak and public, private and public keys. And now I'm just going to run curl on the database. Oh. So what I'm doing here is I'm just doing a REST API call where I am writing here, and I use the W for write, and this is a namespace. Foo/bar is the namespace, and this is my value here. So I'm just going to store the value. So I get an OK as that's fine. So I'm doing that 4 times, and now I'm doing another event. Hello. So how to read? I just change here from W to R, and I just keep the rest because I'm reading from that namespace and that value. So when I read, let me do it like this. So when I read, I'm getting all the things you've seen in the structure, where the value is hello, the first time I've seen is that time, the last time I've seen is that time, the source, and actually I've seen it only once. Now if I do it with foo, you will see that it's going to be like 3, a kind of 3, and it's going to be different from the first time and the last time I've seen it. So there was just a few seconds of delta, 5 seconds. The source is unknown because I haven't set it. And this is the source timestamp, and I have a count of 4. All right, a demo that works. How much time do I have? A few minutes. 5, okay. So things that SigningDB does, I leverage Rust, so it's already in Rust. I can do multiple writes without being atomic. I don't care because in the end, in the database, I'm just adding the sum of what the things I'm having because I'm just counting. So if I was doing other things than counting, if I was like, for example, writing some values, I may have to have a delta or a diff or something, or we're merging. But in my case, it's just counting, so I can just do a simple add to all the other values that are written at the same time. I'm using Rust hash map for now to store the namespace, so I could change it in the future, but for now it's working. Keys can be configured to be only in memory or only on disk or both, depending on what you want to do. And attributes are being read automatically thanks to Surdy, which is a Rust serialization library. So integration plan. So my idea for integrating this into MISP is the following. And again, it's my idea. I'm very open to your way of thinking. So we should keep the MySQL way and add SigningDB as an installation dependency. Just add it. Then we have import, export with MySQL signing to SigningDB. So we can go in both ways. Then we have SigningDB side by side with MySQL. So we store in both. We store in the MySQL and in SigningDB. Then we can replace the API to SigningDB feature by feature, so we don't break the MySQL. And once complete, we can remove the MySQL table. So the benefit is we can reduce the storage size. It's designed for MISP. It's serving MISP the best we can. And we can do concurrent read and writes. So this is where you can download it. So please download that, test, open tickets, whatever, I'm listening to use cases you have. And at the same time, I also wrote a small thing to test and debug. I want to see the MySQL queries being done in real time. So I've wrote a MySQL query sniffer in C with libpcap, and I have a Lua-JIT interpreter that gets all the MySQL queries. So I can use Lua to do other things. So then I was just creating CSVs every day of all the data coming to MISP. And I just wrote that for testing, and I just released this because it's cool, and maybe you can enjoy it for other purposes. So with the MISP spirit, MISP is writing the code and doing a spec, and I thought it was nice to also write a spec just to agree on the things. So there is a spec here that you can look at and send your PRs, open issues, and talk about whatever you need. All right, I'm done. Yes.
So first of all, thanks. I mean, it's really great stuff. And going back to one of the things that you raised in the beginning with those questions, I think that the answer to most of those questions is both, depending on the user you ask. So we had some discussions recently about exactly those questions. And we have some users that really want to do bulk sightings. and some users that are just doing reporting, for example, where they need more accuracy on who they share with and so on. So indeed, the mixed model sounds best. But instead, perhaps thinking of copying the data between the two, we should consider two systems that work both at the same time with MISP. That would take a lot of the restrictions off your back, basically, but it would allow us to still maintain what we have currently for those users that do the reporting, and for example, for us that want to do the massive amount. So one of the things that would be interesting, and what I'm curious about your view is, what are we missing to be able to on-demand convert between one of these systems to the other? Are we missing anything on the existing side to be able to do that, to, for example, get the summary of the data out in one shot?
Yeah, so basically, I think I agree. We should do both because we can do, and we're also learning. Like it's nobody's doing that today. Like nobody's doing even outside of MISP a scalable way to cite and to see everything. And we also know that citing is just beyond indicators. It's not just about the indicators. It's also like everything you're seeing. So we don't know. And I think there's nothing I'm missing today in how MISP is designed in order to do that. The only thing I can add is just another REST call at the time where you just store into the citing to citing DB. And that's how we could start. And it could be, I think it should be an optional thing in the very beginning. Like it does not matter except for those it matters. And then we can learn on who is using that really and how we can tailor. If we were doing something that everybody knew already in the past have done, it's easy. The answer is like, oh yeah, sure, this is how it's done in industry. But we also need to learn ourselves. So I think it's best to say, all right, it's an optional dependency. And then it's a side-by-side dependency. And then who knows? It doesn't matter. If we can still store in MySQL because it's working for some users, I mean, why stop that? Because we want to stop that for no good reason, right? I mean, that's how I see that. Thanks. Any other question? All right, well, thank you.